Okay, and then Raphael, you can do the opening portion of the meeting.
Okay, pursuant to recently adopted amendments to the Illinois Open Meetings Act included in Public Act 101-0640, public bodies may, in certain circumstances, hold entirely virtual public meetings without a quorum physically present in any one location. The Governor's Executive Order 2022-01 has extended this provision through today's date. As co-chair for the Council for Inclusion and Community, I've made the determination that it's not practical nor prudent to meet in person at this time. Accordingly, this meeting of the Council for Inclusion and Community is being conducted virtually, with members participating through the Zoom webinar platform. Assistant Village Manager, as always, Manager Sharon Tarrant is there in the Village Hall conference room as required by the Open Meetings Act.
Okay. And I can call the roll. Co-chair Guzman,
Here.
Co-chair Scott,
Here.
Member Bjork, Member Evans,
Here.
Member Flanagan, Member Reverend Catrice Kirk McKenzie,
Here.
Member Vivek Mali, Member Anise Moses,
Here.
Member Amy myself, Member Emily Robbins,
Here.
Member Gary Rubin,
Here.
and Member Bob Young.
Here.
Okay, we have a quorum.
Thank you, Sharon.
Great. The first item on the agenda is
Go.
the first item on the agenda is consideration of the September 7th meeting minutes. Is there a motion to approve?
I
So
so move.
moved.
I'm gonna give
Second.
it to Bob and the second to Gary. Okay, we will do a roll call vote. Co-chair Guzman,
Yes.
Co-chair Scott,
Yes.
Co-chair or Member Evans,
Yes.
Member Kirk McKenzie,
Yes.
Member Moses,
Yes.
Member Robbins,
Yes.
Member Rubin,
Yes.
Member Young.
Yes.
Okay, motion carries.
Great. Now, this time in the meeting is when a member of the public may comment on something that is not on the agenda. I will ask Sharon to read any public comments that were submitted prior to the meeting. After that, I will ask any members of the public would like to comment or say something that is not on the agenda. Please hold the comment time. We're going to do it a little differently this week. We're going to extend it to 10 minutes. And it is not intended for, let's say, a debate, but rather a short discussion. So Sharon, if you don't mind.
There were no comments submitted in advance of the meeting, and I do see Miles Mendoza has raised his hand. I will give him audio permission. Miles,
Thank
you
you.
should be able to unmute now.
Sure. Hi, everybody. Miles Mendoza. I think you guys might know me by now. I'm on the majority of these video calls and committee meetings. And over a long period of time, I've done my best to try to become available and participate in the committee. And I have been refused at every corner. And I think, you know, it's my perspective that I hold a minority opinion in the town of Glencoe, and that generally a minority opinion on this committee is not welcome. And so I'm here to just kind of tell you my story to see if that might help you open your mind a little bit. I would like to be involved. I would like to make Glencoe a more inclusive, welcoming place for everybody. And I don't think that that's happening currently. So just as background, you know, I'm an oddball. First of all, I would consider myself a human being. Someone asked me, "What are you?" My response would be human. And I do think we're getting to a point where that response should be more your skin color, your gender, a lot of different immutable characteristics that are now designed to define us. I'm a human being, but I think for the sake of this committee, it would be helpful to understand I come from a background, my father was Mexican. He drank from a separate drinking fountain. He had to sit in a separate area of a movie theater. So he suffered discrimination as a result of the color of his skin and his background. Married my mom, a Scandinavian lady. As a kid, they would tease me and they would call me Sweetie Gonzalez. I was just like an oddball. So I married it was a low-income Democrat, Mexican, Swedish household. I married into a Jewish upper middle class household, more conservative. My cousin, I have a family who's Korean and Scandinavian. Our family holidays are like the UN. It's just totally mixed up, doesn't make sense. The food we serve, it could be a lot of different things on a lot of different holidays. And that was the beauty of our family is that lack of need to identify ourselves. We were family. We were people. We were Americans. And I think a lot of that has really changed. I invited the committee, at least I tried to invite the majority of the committee to an event we held last night in Evanston. I participate in a group called the Foundation Against Intolerance and Racism. We were able to host a myriad of different speakers last night. They were wonderful. One of the individuals, his name is Daryl Davis. He's an amazing blues musician. He has single-handedly taken the hoods and robes of hundreds of KKK Klansmen. And he did it. You have to hear him tell the story. I can't tell the story myself. But he did it by sitting down and talking to people that one would think he would hate and that would hate him. And over time, discipline, focus, they were able to find more similarities than differences. And when those similarities come together, you're able to actually make change. And he was able to, he has this collection of the KKK outfits as a result of looking for similarities rather than differences. Another woman, African-American attorney out of Los Angeles, also got disenfranchised by some of the ideology happening in Hollywood. She's a Hollywood attorney. She decided to move to Montana. And of course, as an African-American lesbian woman, she was expecting the worst. Going to live in Montana. What's going to happen? There's one set of white people who I would expect is going to embrace me. This is the liberal elite. But boy, if I get to that other side, the Republicans, the conservatives, I'm going to be met with hate. Similar story. She's sitting outside. They're having a conversation after a school shooting. She's an attorney, and she says, what are we going to do about these school shootings? They're horrible. But boy, I can't imagine degrading constitutional rights, eroding a Second Amendment. And just over her shoulder, she sees this scary-looking white guy with a teardrop tattoo staring at her. And first she just thinks, this is a threat. I don't know what's going on here. He came closer and closer. They got a little scared. Turned out he heard what she said and that they had more in common than they had differences. And they had a conversation about Second Amendment rights. And she discovered, it turns out all these Republicans and conservatives aren't quite as scary as maybe they might be made to be in our heads. And if we look for similarities more than differences, we actually might make some peace in this world, create less division, not more. And it's my concern that what we're seeing today and when we're all looking for the same thing. I think that's the good news with this committee. I think we all have good intent. The intent is to reduce racism, increase inclusion, build community. But with every policy solution, there's never a perfect solution. There are only trade-offs. I don't care what you present to me. There will be no perfect solution, only trade-offs. But without any respectful dissent on this policy, on this committee, I believe we'll only see one side. We may see solutions without the trade-offs. And it concerns me deeply that if there's an individual that has a dissenting opinion, even if it's highly respectful, which I believe I've been for a long time, that opinion will be discounted, unheard, unconsidered. And yes, I got my 3 minutes for a long time, and now I have my 10 minutes. And I appreciate it. You're listening. I don't think I'm part of a dialogue. I don't think I'm part of a committee. I don't think I'm part of a decision-making process. I don't think that anybody that holds my views ever will be allowed on a committee like this, because you've got the majority, you've got the power, and you're going to do what you want to do, right? But America is best when it's a competition of ideas. But we need competition of ideas. We need solutions looking at all sides, all trade-offs, really kind of thinking comprehensively. Well, if we do this, if we hang this flag, what is the consequence to part of the community? I don't know that there's anybody representing those ideals on this committee right now. And I think that the idea of somebody actually dissenting would look harmful. Perhaps it would look hurtful, prejudiced. I don't know what term you might use, but it doesn't feel that there's a space in this committee for a minority to hold a view. And so I ask you to reconsider, to have an individual, if it's not me, someone else, with respectful dissent, and is able to bring the trade-offs of some of the policy solutions that you all are considering. I'll stop there. I would love to have more dialogue, but I realize I'm probably at the end of my time. I've said my piece. Thank you for allowing that.
So, Mr. Mendoza, we have 2 minutes left in this 10-minute period. And then if we want to discuss it further as a committee, we can pick that up later in the meeting. So if anyone has anything they want to say, you know, in immediate response in these 2 minutes that we have remaining, I think Mr. Mendoza is entitled to his full 10 minutes. And then we can make a decision as a committee later in the meeting if we want to continue the discussion as part of our regular agenda. Just signal with a wave or nod or a handshake.
I wanted to say real quick, thank you, Mr. Mendoza, for taking the time for speaking with us and for expressing your opinion. I know that you've been in a majority of the meetings in the past. And again, with the limitations of 3 minutes during our normal meetings, that's not much time. I would recommend, if you could, email the committee's website or email address and have those issues or those concerns brought up, so that if it's that way, it can be tailored to us in a ahead of time manner versus only giving you or any other person that has concerns only 3 minutes to express that. But I do appreciate you coming on here. I do appreciate you voicing that concern and your opinion as to what we need to do as a committee to move forward. So I just wanted to say thank you for your time and for coming on again today. I know you have a busy schedule.
And last comment, thank you to, just the direct request is to make sure that this committee includes minorities that have a dissentful opinion, a different opinion from what the majority of you hold right now. I think there's a need for a minority opinion within this committee. I think it would make Glencoe a more inclusive place, a more healthy place to live.
Okay, so you're at time, Mr. Mendoza. Thank you. Bob, we'll take your comment in just 1 second, but I just wanted to point out, again, for the record, that we do not appoint ourselves. We're appointed by the village board. And so if you are concerned with the makeup of the committee, those concerns are better addressed directly to the Board of Trustees and to President Roan. So while I appreciate your point and will continue to hear you during public comment, in terms of the makeup of the committee, that is something we don't have any control over. So, Bob, go ahead.
Is Mr. Mendoza still available?
I'm here, yes.
Oh, good. The group that you're associated with, Oak Rose, does it receive any support from the family of Betsy DeVos, the former?
No.
Education? It does not.
What's the purpose of the question?
because I noticed that you are on a committee of the American Enterprise Institute. Betsy DeVos was a trustee of the American Enterprise Institute, and I believe her husband, if I'm not mistaken, is currently on the Board of Trustees of the American Enterprise Institute. But your organization, you're saying, does not receive any support from the family, corporations, foundations associated with DeVos.
Hey, Bob, I
No.
don't, with all due respect, Bob, I don't see the relevance in bringing that up and expressing just what Mr. Mendoza was pointing out, which is exactly that. Perhaps we need to consider that a minority opinion should be considered in our own ideology. I don't feel that it's necessary to bring up our professional businesses or professional lives and what we're associated with, not associated with, just because of some perception of what that may or may not entail. In other words, I don't see the point of it. I don't see the relevance of bringing that up when we asked Mr. Mendoza to be here.
Well,
And Raphael, I would just say, just in my own defense, I would just say, I think that's exactly the point. Like, we're looking for differences, we can find them. When we look for similarities, we can find them. And we'll create more love, peace, harmony, and community and inclusion when we look for the similarities. And Robert, I think your intent is good. I think you have good intent for people. But I don't think you're looking for similarities right now. I think you're looking for ways of excluding a minority voice in the community. And I don't think that's the purpose of this committee.
Okay, so we're at time, guys. I'm sorry to break it up.
I just want to make clear, you're saying that you do not receive, your group does not receive any form of financial support from anyone associated.
We're
with
at time,
DeVos.
guys, and we can discuss
Can I
this more.
please get an answer? I really would appreciate it, please.
I'd be happy to do that. So the American Enterprise Institute is an organization I deeply love and respect. They believe in a competition of ideas. They have stakeholders with a myriad of different views. I'll go so far as to say I deeply respect the work of Betsy DeVos, but we don't receive a cent. So you've got the implication of the Betsy DeVos connection, because I do support many of the things that she does, but I don't receive a dime.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mendoza. And I'm sorry, we can continue and you're welcome, as always, Mr. Mendoza, you're welcome to stay on the call. If we'll decide as a group whether or not we want to continue this discussion at a later point in the meeting. But for now, we need to continue. And I'm sorry, Bob, I don't want to interrupt you. And if you want to continue your comments later on, we can do that. But for now, we need to move on with our regular
and I'll just say thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Okay, I appreciate your open-mindedness. Thank you for having me talk.
Thank you, Miles. Okay, so we now are going to flip-flop our agenda just slightly, because we have Emily Mizell here from Family Service, and she's here to talk about mental health first aid. She's going to give us a little overview of what that means, why it's important, and why we might want to get involved. And then after that, we'll put all of the discussion and sort of updates and all of the usual things that we do on the back half of the meeting. So mostly in the interest of Emily's time. Thank you so much for being here. And Emily, take it away.
Hi, thank you guys for having me. I'm Emily Mizell. I'm a licensed clinical social worker at Family Service of Glencoe. I have worked at Family Service for 4.5 years. My role has changed significantly over the course of the pandemic. I was hired, I'm the senior program manager here, so I do everything 65 and plus in the village of Glencoe, and help older adults in the community age and also outside the community and help their adult children support them. We became a dementia-friendly community with the help of the village, support of the village, and many other partnerships in 2019. Something I'm really proud of. Talk about inclusivity and diversity and allowing and encouraging people living with the disease to, feel part of the community and have people understand what they're experiencing. So since the pandemic, we've seen an influx in mental health related calls with public safety. One of my roles here is to serve as a crisis response worker. I am primarily the main one during the day, usually Monday through Thursday, 9 to 6, but also I do get calls on the weekends and at nights, depending on the person that they're calling about. So COVID has changed the world and has changed our community. The calls that we're getting, the intensity of calls, the frequency of calls, the puzzle pieces we're having to put together to help families navigate, not the person only living with the mental illness, but their families. And I really feel it's important to treat the whole family system and not just the individual who is having a mental health crisis. So a few months ago, Jocelyn Center and North Shore University Health System partnered together to provide opportunities for individuals in the community to become mental health first aid trainers. Myself and Tara, who is another clinician here, we applied and were accepted into the program. It's a pilot program. They cover the cost of our training, which is about $2,000, all the books. It's a 3-day training. And I am trained in the adult component, and Tara's trained in the adolescent youth component. So the whole point of, Hillary, if you want to show my slide, the whole point is that it's like CPR training. Think about being prepared to help someone who needs CPR. It's the same of recognizing someone who is experiencing a mental health challenge. And we'll go through that. So currently 2.6 million people have been trained in mental health first aid. It's understanding the signs and symptoms, what to do, how to ask people what they're feeling. So many of us are afraid to ask people how they're doing because we don't want an answer besides fine. Think about it. When someone tells you they're not fine, what do you do next? I mean, depending on where you ask them, your relationship with them, it's uncomfortable. So mental health first aid training is a training that allows people to build their skill set and recognize and know how to approach someone and know how to change the language. So inclusivity, not defining someone on their mental illness. They are a person first, then they're living with a mental illness. You can put that with anything specific. You got it, Hillary?
I'm sending it to Sharon because I don't know if it's because of my iPad for some reason. I don't have my normal, but I am sending it on to Sharon and she should be sharing it momentarily. Sorry about that.
That's okay. So with the mental health first aid training, we were talking about how we could start the training. I'm expected to train 3 times a year. I'm supposed to train a group of individuals 3 times a year. It can be any group, but I thought that you guys would be a great group to start with, and to understand the signs and symptoms are really important, and what to do after that. You got it, Sharon?
Yep. Just navigating over to my screen share.
It's okay.
Yes. Here we go.
Thank you.
Bring it up. Here we are.
It's just one slide, so it's not too complicated. So the mental health first aid training, like I said, more than 2.6 million people across the United States have been trained in it. It started in Australia, the concept, in 2001, and it was from a nurse who was specializing in health education and a mental health literacy professor. And they ran a nonprofit promoting charity focused on training and research, and it's been adapted to the United States. So the goal is to learn how to support your friends, family, and neighbors. Mental health first aid teaches you how to identify, understand, and respond to signs of mental health and substance use challenges among adults. You'll build skills and competence you need to reach out and provide initial support to those who are struggling. You'll also learn how to help connect them to appropriate support. You at no point are diagnosing anyone. The goal is not to diagnose. That is not your job. The goal is to assess and approach. And once you do that, to have the skill set and the comfort to know what to do next. After the course, you'll be able to recognize common signs and symptoms of mental health challenges, recognize common signs and symptoms of substance use challenges, understand how to interact with a person in crisis, know how to connect a person with help, and use self-care tools and techniques. As a clinician myself, all day long, I'm helping people in crisis. I had to make sure that I'm taking care of myself. And so that's part of the training as well, because it's important when you hear people's stories, you can feel overwhelmed and burdened by that and have a trauma response. 21% of adults are experiencing a mental illness equivalent to over 50 million Americans. And 15% of adults had a substance use disorder in the past year. And I'm sure the numbers are skyrocketing since COVID. So mental health first aid really focuses on this algae component, assess for risk of suicide and harm. So you're always assessing and approaching. That's what the A stands for. Listen non-judgmentally. The training will work on language to use, not to say, I exactly know how you feel or I understand, because no one understands each other's. You may have had a similar experience, but we can't really understand what others are going through unless you're truly in their shoes. Give reassurance and information. You're saying things like, you're not alone. I'm here if you need to talk. Encouraging appropriate professional help, encouraging them to say, have you talked to a professional about this? Do you speak to a professional? And obviously encourage self-help and other support strategies. What do you like to do? How can we get you more involved in, going to the gym or getting a cup of coffee? So the point of this mental health first aid training is that we have the skill set to help recognize that our friends and family and neighbors are struggling and to intervene before it becomes a crisis. I'm intervening when it gets to become a crisis. And that's a whole nother part of the training that we will explore together. You can take the slide down if you want so we can ask questions, but the training consists of, it's a 2.5 hour own independent study on your own time. It's very well done. They give scenarios, case examples, and then we come together from about 9 to 3:30. So we were thinking a Saturday. We would serve food, obviously, and coffee and beverages, and go through that materials and go through scenarios and just continue to build your skill set. We did the training on a blended version. So you can do it in person, you can do it all online. I was thinking about doing a blended version. So doing the 2.5 hours on the screen and then the rest in person, but we can obviously revisit that. I'm open to doing either. It would probably be co-facilitated with an instructor from Jocelyn, which would be great, as you guys would be my guinea pigs and I would love any feedback. But, I think from what we're hearing and seeing in the community, Glencoe is not immune to this. We are even seeing it more frequently than you'd ever anticipate. And while we are an affluent community, people are still struggling. And the stories are getting more intense. And people need to know that they're not alone. They need to know that their experiences are not so out there, and that we can sit with people in their moments of discomfort and know that it's a safe space to talk about, and know that things are going to be okay. And the whole goal with this too is reassuring and encouraging people and reminding them you can recover. There is a path to recovery. This does not have to define your whole life. And so I really push that when I'm working with families, like, let's get us back on that path to recovery. And let's learn along the way and let's do it together.
Emily, thank you so much. You're here, so we're sold on the concept, but I think the folks, I see Reverend Kirk McKenzie has her hand raised, so let's start there. I was hoping to just open the discussion.
Yeah, I just wanted to take the opportunity to affirm Emily's experience and expertise. In fact, this past July, Emily came out to my congregation, St. Paul, on a Sunday that we were focused on mental health and mental awareness. And particularly when you look at the African-American community, mental challenges is not something that's talked about. And there were, a few circumstances and situations that were happening within my own congregation that we just didn't know how to handle. And so as a result of Emily coming out, just for a moment of naming and claiming this within our, Sunday worship, I believe that there have been several of those persons that have contacted you, and we've found, resources for these families. So I think that this is extremely important. I agree that Glencoe is not immune to it. And I thank you for offering up this service to us And I would love to see us, move forward with training of our council and inviting others from the community that would benefit from this as well.
Thank you. I think, in creating that space, and Reverend Kirk really did create a safe space. I think one thing about social work in general and just being inclusive is really going to the place that has significance to the population you're trying to reach out. I went to their community and I was invited, and it was so welcoming. And I got such great responses and have been able to really be helpful in some situations that were challenging for Reverend Kirk to navigate, not just because she's very capable, but having that professional come in and kind of, we have our expected roles, and she can play the part that's spiritual connector, guider, and I could be the professional clinician helping from the other. So it does take a village, and I think being aware of our resources in the community also help when we do approach or engage someone who is having a mental health challenge or substance use challenge.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Are we all in agreement that this is something that we should pursue? Show of hands.
Yes.
Great.
Yes.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. Emily, what further do you need from us to move forward, or should we just stay tuned?
I mean, I think that we talked about a date possibly of January 21st. I believe it's a Saturday. Jocelyn Center would help with the registration and getting all the materials that we need to be successful that day. That's the joy of having this pilot program. It's been great because there's a group of us and we meet monthly and we check in. And so it's kind of formalized, setting a date. And then once we set a date, about a month in advance, we would send the materials to you by your email, and you would start, it gives you enough time to do the training. You're not rushed to do it. So we want to give you enough time to kind of get your mindset and go through the materials.
And Emily, perhaps you and I can connect. I know you and I have the benefit of working in the same building, so we can bump into one another frequently. Perhaps we can connect on some of the logistics. We have some questions around fees and things like that we still need to vet out with this group. But maybe you and I can gather some information.
Yeah, that's great.
Report back at our next meeting.
Perfect.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Emily. You're welcome to stay on if you'd like.
Is there a question? One more question? Oh, yeah.
Of course, Annie's.
Hi, thank you, Emily. It's nice to meet you sort of in person, kind of ish. We missed you. I was just wondering, is this something, so sorry, my kids always do dishes when I'm here. Is this something that we'll be able to participate in person? I know that we don't know how things are going to be, but I just feel like things like this are more effective if we have contact with one another, like in real life.
So there are two options. We can do a blended version where you do 2.5 hour training on your own, and then we can meet in person for the remainder of it, which is from the 9 to 3:30, or we can do the all, virtual option as well, depending on, what's going on in the world at that moment. So I like in person. I like being in person. I don't like to be on Zoom. That's not my cup of tea, but I understand that people have their comfort levels and I'm open to either. I did my training there were 20 of us and we were all over the country on Zoom. And it was interesting because we each had our own area of expertise, and it was a great experience, but I am a better learner in person. So I'm happy to, go through each option with the group as well, and opening it up to more people through the village or whomever we feel would be another great fit for the initial training as well.
It's a great question, Anise. And again, those are the sorts of logistics we can also, some of it will be like have to be closer to the date to determine, because I don't think we know what's going to be happening in January at this juncture, certainly in today's world. But some of those options I think we can also iron out with Sharon offline, including whether, I don't know, is it possible to do both? Can some people opt in one way? I don't know. There's probably lots of different choices. So let's iron out the details and come back to the group. But that's only 2 weeks away. So hopefully we'll have a nice report for you guys at the beginning of November. Any other questions for Emily? Last chance. Going once.
You can always email me. Or find me in the village hall on the second floor. But thank you for having me. I know this group's really important to Glencoe, and I appreciate being here tonight and seeing all the familiar faces and the new faces that I haven't met yet. So thank you.
Thank you, Emily.
Have a
Thank
good
you.
Thanks
evening.
again.
Bye.
All right, thanks you guys. So as you know, we've flip-flopped our agenda, and now we'll move on to sort of our regular updates on council activities and initiatives. I actually thought that timing, or that question from Annis was really well timed, in the sense that I am starting to wonder in terms of our committee, just a temperature check in terms of in-person versus Zoom. It's probably the worst possible time to ask that, as we are heading into the freezing cold and likely going to see an uptick in both flu and COVID pretty imminently. But how are people feeling about in-person at this juncture? Okay, nods mean yes, you would like to meet in person. Is there anyone who feels strongly about not meeting in person? And we'll poll the folks who are not here, just because I think we need to navigate that piece thoughtfully. So you're either for it or you're in the middle, but nobody strongly feels that we should not meet in person. Okay, so again, that's something I think that Raphael and I can iron out with Sharon offline, whether we can get that together in time for our next meeting, which is in 2 weeks, or if we try and tee that up for December, remains to be seen. But I mostly just wanted to get a sense of how people are feeling with regard to in-person versus Zoom. Other things. I think we covered mental health first aid. So thank you for your time. And I really think that this is a worthwhile investment for our committee, both probably in terms of some resources, but also more importantly, in terms of our time. Another thing that it's been sort of in the ether a little bit for me is the idea of bringing on GCIC volunteers. We, in some ways, this is a response to Mr. Mendoza's suggestion that we are not inclusive enough by nature. We don't get to just choose arbitrarily sort of who comes in and comes out at any given moment. But I do think we can learn from our sort of cousin, the sustainability task force on the other side of the village board. And they have very effectively used volunteers alongside their committee members. And given the amount of interest that we have generated over the last couple of months, I thought it might be time to create a pathway for volunteers. So I kind of just wanted to throw that out there and see what you thought. I've had a couple of different conversations with folks who said, like, well, how can I get involved? I'd really like to do more to help you advance the mission. So anyone have thoughts, comments? Yay, nay? That's a horrible idea. I love that idea.
It's not a bad idea. It's just a question of how to utilize them in the most efficient and effective way possible. We obviously don't need volunteers actually we do need volunteers to come to the meetings. That'd be helpful. But as far as also whatever events that we have, or if there's that event that we're friendly, hold a co-event with another of the several councils there in the village, that would be ideal. It's just to what several members have said in the past, the issue or the problem is always getting our name out there and getting advertisement or getting awareness that we have something coming out. So I'm all for having volunteers. It opens up the inclusiveness of our organization, goes to the heart of what we're supposed to be about, as well as our mission statement. But we just need to be aware and how to make the most of it if we do have people volunteer. But I like the idea.
If I could offer a suggestion as the group is thinking about volunteers, and I'm happy to get with my counterpart who works with the sustainability task force to pick his brain and learn a little bit more. Some of it may be on kind of discrete projects or tasks. Like if they're having, like, for example, the donation and recycling drop-off event, they needed volunteers to staff that. So they did a call for volunteers. That was a discrete project that started at, I don't remember, maybe 9 o'clock in the morning and ended at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. It may be helpful as the group contemplates volunteer opportunities to think about what applications lend themselves to volunteer support. Again, the sustainability task force does tend to use them for specific events or projects. Like they have a program, and I don't know if it's just task force members or volunteers also that are helping check to see if people have properly sorted their recyclables in their recycling carts to make sure that there's not garbage inadvertently commingled with the recyclable material. So that's kind of a more hands-on project, quite literally, actually.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess I might have put a little more structure around my thinking with that. Yes, that's exactly how the Sustainability Task Force uses them. So I could just see, because we are sort of working right now, we are looking at these different buckets of kind of through the lens of relationships. So many, if not all of you, have volunteered for different roles. You know, for example, Sakura has committed to help manage the relationship with the Sustainability Task Force. So then as that evolves and as discrete projects come along, you know, it might be helpful for her to have people that she can rely on outside of our immediate group. And then in that case, if we were to keep a list of volunteers, you know, maybe there's some kind of, I would have to ask Barney Gallagher, because I think he's done this quite astutely, but you know, maybe there's a way when they intake people, it's like, you know, what kind of tasks are you interested in? And then it's just sort of mix and match. Anyway, Annie, so what were you going to say, hon? Sorry, I didn't mean to call you hon.
No, that's okay. So, I mean, since I've come on this committee, like one of my fantasies has been that, you know, we do some hands-on projects together that involve some kind of bridge building between other communities. And, you know, I know that we've been busy with a lot of different things, but like, for instance, there are people that I know at Stroger Hospital, or there are people that I know in Englewood, or there are people that I know in Evanston, or there are people that nonprofit organizations that are in need of like items. And, you know, I put out a wish list, and then all of a sudden there are all these bags lined up outside of my house, and like those things have to be gone through, and they need to be sorted, and some of them need to be washed, and they need to, you know, kind of go in these different directions. And it, or like there's a woman in Winnetka who offered me 1,000 daffodil bulbs to be distributed to like these different nonprofits. And then I was kind of like, well, it'd be really cool if we went and planted them like in these different places that are accepting these donations. Like I hope that we can kind of develop that component of our group to be, you know, have our hands in the dirt, so to speak, or and just, you know, network with other communities and within our own. I mean, you know, Reverend Kirk McKenzie, you have a church, you know, so you know, I go through a lot of organizations like that, and you find out about needs in our community and outside of our community, and like you do networking, and you know, I'm sure you do collections. Like it would be amazing if like we could headquarter like at your church and be a part of that, you know, within the Glencoe community and outside of the Glencoe community. I mean, you've got the digs right there. So that's a wonderful place to start. So that's sort of my my fantasy. And I think that people, what I have experienced is like, you know, maybe I'm wrong, maybe some of you love data entry. That's not my kind of like volunteering. People need it, you know, but I think when I can go somewhere and I can put my hands on something and I'm like, oh, these size 9 shoes are going to, you know, this place where someone needs them, it makes me feel like a part of humanity and a part of like changing like that one person, like it's helpful and it feels like a connection. So that's some of what I'm hoping for. And I feel like that's a way that people who want to volunteer could really be a part of things. And they could even be a part of suggesting organizations that, or people in need, you know, respecting people's privacy and things like that. But anyway, that's just my caffeinated response.
I think that's really helpful, actually. And you said some things better than I could have. I mean, it's in some ways we're in the business of community building, and it's much more organic, as those of us who do participate in our faith communities or other, you know, other kinds of volunteer organizations know. Sometimes those conversations that are happening around the table as you guys are sorting shoes or, you know, organizing goodie bags or whatever it is, can be really meaningful, and I think really work towards sort of our overall goal of inclusion and community. So anyway, I kind of threw that out there. I didn't mean to dominate the conversation with it, but I'm grateful for your feedback, and we'll touch base with Barney Gallagher and with Sharon, and then maybe come back to you all with a little more structure around that idea. I'm gonna breeze through my like other, I don't even know if you guys need to know anything that I'm doing, because I'm going to sort of, in the interest of time, I really want to get to talking about the event that we have this weekend at St. Paul in partnership with North Shore United Methodist Church. So if you don't mind me putting you on the spot, Pastor Kay, would you speak to some of the work that we have been doing together and where this is all headed?
Absolutely. So we're really excited about kicking off this speaker series this Sunday with a panel discussion entitled Blacks in Glencoe, Looking Back, Looking Forward. And there's been a lot of great work that's gone into it. I want to thank Hillary for all of her work and collaboration, also partnering with North Shore United Methodist Church with their Racial Justice Committee. And so we're really excited about this Sunday. We've got 4 panelists. Each of them happen to be members of St. Paul, but they all have these various backgrounds and perspectives and ways in which they have been involved in the community. I don't know if any of you have had the opportunity to see the exhibit at the Glencoe Historical Society. Yay, I see some heads nodding, and I hope if you haven't got the opportunity, we'll get to. If you haven't, this will maybe whet your palate just a little bit more, because we have panelists that are, St. Paul, there's 2 families in this exhibit that they're really looking at, the Wilson family, the Bell family, and St. Paul was really birthed by Homer Wilson and his vision, and his oldest living descendant is a member of St. Paul and will be one of these panelists. And so this is really this opportunity to hear and share stories. It's an opportunity to hear perspectives of what it has been like to be Black in Glencoe, but also really looking forward and how we are going to do the work of creating an inclusive community. So I'm hopeful this will come out 1 to 2:30. We don't want to take all of the Sunday afternoon, but I think it'll be a great opportunity to hear and share. We're working on some elements to create audience engagement and really promote sharing in a way that may get everyone involved. Hillary, is there anything I've left out?
Hillary, you're silent.
Sorry, I needed to, I've got the same thing going on as Denise. There's probably no worse time to have a meeting in a household with teenage boys than, 6:30 at night. But no, I think you covered it, other than I hope everyone will come and bring their friends and know that this is a beginning, a jumping off point, and hopefully something that we're going to be doing a lot more of. Again, really speaking to just opening up the conversation in as many different places and corners of our community as we can. So I'm really grateful to Pastor Kay for leading on this. It's been a true pleasure, and I think that you all will be really excited with what results.
I do just want to add, we would love to see you in person, but if you're not able to make it in person, we will stream it, and it will be on the St. Paul Facebook page. So I can send that link over, that we can send it to the entire council, that everyone would have that, just in the event that you're not able to be there in person, or later go back and catch it.
And we've also been working, I mean, I think this goes without saying, but in pretty close conversation with the Historical Society. And so we are going to be recording it as well, primarily because they want to keep it for their exhibit, but also I think, to the extent that we can share it out afterwards, we'll have the opportunity to do that as well. So any questions or comments about this event or the direction of things? With
I'm looking forward to coming on Sunday, very, very much. I also want to commend the council for the program at Writers Theater last night. I thought the panelists that were put together did a very, very good job. It was very, very interesting. And I want to also add that if you've not been to the Historical Society, my wife and I went today. It is an excellent exhibit. And we were talking with one of the volunteers who said there's more to come. There are going to be video clips that will be shown in the near future. So again, what the council has been doing, I think, flies in the face of the criticism that Mr. Mendoza has leveled against us. I also want you to know that he has also leveled similar criticism against New Trier High School. If you are not familiar with that, I urge you. It was in the Tribune. There's a clear political agenda on his part. Please, if you're not familiar with the American Enterprise Institute, check that out. But I'm sure you've all read the exchange of emails with him over the past month. And I believe one of you wrote that he was painting with a very, very broad brush. It doesn't resemble the Glencoe I know. So I think it would be condescending not to ask him questions such as I did, to engage with him, to listen with him about where he's coming from, because there's a clear agenda. Betsy DeVos wanted to do away with the Department of Education. Betsy DeVos and the people around her would like to see public education come to an end. So let's be wise about this in engaging with Mr. Mendoza and others. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob. Yeah, thank you. I think, the point really is everyone has a voice here, and it's important that we be heard. So I appreciate your contributions, and I appreciate Mr. Mendoza sort of keeping us on task a little bit. But again, I think primarily his concerns are better addressed in front of the Board of Trustees. So you can say it a lot to us, but there's nothing that we can really do about it, short of just trying to continue to be as inclusive and sort of model good behavior as best as we can. Anywho, moving on. We were talking about the event on Sunday. Any other comments specifically about the 23rd? Okay, great. I'm looking at my notes to make sure we have an update about the speaker series. Neither John nor Amy are here, as it turns out, but we have settled on a date It's at the end of January. We will be hosting it at the Writers Theater. This is the same event that he had described. They've been working with an immigrant, a long-term immigrant who came many years ago and then has subsequently worked to help settle newer immigrants to the Chicago area. And so I think we'll have someone who's sort of more longstanding in the community and someone who is newer to the community coming to speak with us at the end of January. Really the only update there, I think, being the date, which is now not, it's escaping me, but I think it's the last Tuesday in January. Maybe Sharon can search her files while we move on to the next thing, and then she can update us before the meeting closes. Annie, anything new with getting to know the heart of Glencoe? And no pressure. I just want to give you the opportunity if there is anything.
No, I haven't done anything. But I have one kid that's not that whatever, but I have one kid that did a gap year. So he's applying to college. And then I have an actual senior who is also applying to college. So right now I'm navigating what feels like twins. So I apologize, but also it would be helpful if anybody had someone that, they feel would be great to interview. I would love some names. That would be helpful. Like I kind of have my list, but my list has sort of my version of things. So I would love, some help with that.
Well, I know I have a list that I was supposed to send to you that I didn't, so noted. And if anyone else has thoughts on, folks who you just encounter in our space on the day-to-day, and you feel like, hey, I'd like to know more about that person, or I think that people in Glencoe should know more about that person, by all means, send those names to Annie so that she can continue her beautiful writing. I missed that column. So I know that you're getting twins off to college, but I would like you to prioritize writing the column.
I want to get back to it. It was something that I enjoyed.
Thank you. Well, we'll try and make it a little bit easier for you. And then on that note, you and Amy were also working to connect with the Glencoe Youth Service. I think that's still, I don't know that there's much to report there either, but negotiations continue. You're trying to figure out how that's all going to work, and you'll let us know when you know more.
Yep.
Again, in the interest of time, we have been encouraged and invited to attend the Light the Lights event that the village is hosting and always hosts some version of on the Friday after Thanksgiving. I think it's literally like right at dusk. Is that? Okay, good. I think that you all will be really pleased with the direction of things. There were some valid criticisms of the event in recent years, and in an effort to be more inclusive, I think the village really responded with some positive changes. And Sharon, if you have like 2 minutes, would you give us a quick overview of sort of the new shape that is taking, and then hopefully you all will be there.
Sure. We're having Light the Lights on the Friday after Thanksgiving at dusk, as Hillary had noted. It's our annual lighting of all of our downtown parkway trees. It's our kickoff to our kind of shop local push during the holiday season. And it's kind of a special time to light all of the parkway trees in downtown Glencoe that stay lit then through Super Bowl Sunday weekend. Why Super Bowl Sunday weekend? I'm not entirely certain, but that's generally when the lights go off. The event is going to have the lighting. The lighting is going to take place on Wyman Green, just outside of Village Hall. We'll have some of the features that we've had in past years and some that are going to be a bit reshaped. We are going to have a trackless train for kids to ride around. I'm told that adults can fit inside of it, but it's a little bit of a tight squeeze for grown-ups, but many do accompany their children and grandchildren and nieces and nephews. We'll have hot chocolate stations. This year, a new feature is we're going to have a live band performing, not a big loud concert of any kind, a small group that'll be stationed right outside of Village Hall. Wyman Green is going to be kind of the hub of the event. So it's, the band is called, oh, I'm gonna get this wrong. It's a play on Rosie the Riveter, Rosie and the Rivets, or something along those lines. And I'm sorry that I'm not getting their name correct just now. They're going to play perform a mix of music, some of which is seasonal and holiday focused, or representing a variety of different holidays, some of which is not holiday music. It's just, kind of fun music. We're trying to see if we can get a couple of food trucks that's still in flight. And let's see, what else do we have? We'll have live reindeer. We will have Frozen characters from the movie Frozen. Writers Theater is hosting Santa. So there will be many different opportunities for people to have photo opportunities, kind of enjoy the start of the winter season in downtown Glencoe. The businesses are encouraged to stay open to accommodate some day after Thanksgiving shopping. And so it is expected to be a very nice event.
Go ahead, Denise.
That sounds fun. I just wondered how the village was addressing kind of what had happened in terms of like being more inclusive to like other religions other than sort of the people who celebrate Christmas. And I didn't hear that in what you were talking about. So I'm just curious as to how that's being addressed.
So the core aspects of the event are going to be here on Wyman Green. Again, all of the downtown Parkway trees are lit. Some of the criticisms or some of the concerns or feedback that we had heard was around the evergreen tree at Park and Vernon that's kind of in front of Hometown Coffee being kind of a focal point. That is a permanently planted Parkway tree along with all of our other trees. So it is lit along with all of our other trees. But recognizing that there was some feedback around the lighting happening at that location, we moved that to Wyman Green so that all of the lights are lit throughout all the downtown as they were previously, but from the Wyman Green location. As I had said, the music selection will be a variety of different types of music, some reflecting different holidays. There will be multiple holidays represented in that music, some non-holiday music as well. Photo opportunities with characters from Frozen. And so we did try to incorporate some other elements that are celebratory of the winter season rather than a specific holiday. Last year, there was some dialogue around specific religious symbols, whether there could be a menorah at the event. And as I think we talked about very briefly shortly thereafter, there are some, let me back up. As we talked about at that time, there was a request that had been made outside of the scope of this event to have a menorah displayed on village property. The village does not use its property as a public forum space, which is really where something like a menorah or any other type of symbol, imagery, signage might be displayed. And so rather than adding additional religious elements, our focus is on winter broadly. The intent of the event is not to be religious in nature. It is intended as a kickoff to the winter season, shop local. It's not intended to focus on the religious aspects of any holiday.
Well, one of the things that I thought we were going to explore, and maybe I missed it, or maybe we got distracted because there was, COVID and all that, but that there are many other towns like surrounding us that find a way to incorporate, like, I'm not a religious person. I'm not looking for a religious anything. But that there seem to be other granted larger communities, but other communities around us that have things that, you know, they have something for Kwanzaa, they have something for, you know, Hanukkah, they have something for Christmas, they have whatever, and they just sort of create this, I don't know, balloon of, you know, as much as they can. And I thought that we were going to do a little bit of research about how that works and how other communities create like inclusion around different symbols that are significant to different celebrations. And maybe I missed that, or maybe that was something that just couldn't happen.
I can speak to that. There are some communities that have a public forum space, and some spaces in communities where it's not the municipality, meaning the village or the city. It maybe sometimes is the park district or another entity that offers a physical space as a public forum. And in that space, they allow individuals or organizations to place signs, symbols, or other images or icons or things like that. And so while those spaces or the items that are displayed in those spaces are not provided by or sponsored by the municipality or the park district as it may be, they are on public property. That is different than a municipality or a unit of government displaying a religious symbol itself. This very quickly cascades into a constitutional law conversation about religious symbols on public property. And I'm not an attorney, and so I would be far out of my depth to go a whole lot further. But to Anise, to your specific question of how does this happen in other communities, that is what has been done in many surrounding communities, albeit not always the city or the village. Sometimes, as I had said, I know one community where it's the park district, for example, that offers that space.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments specifically around that? Emily?
Thanks. I guess I wonder if there's a way for us to, I don't know if it would be working with the park district, but to do something, because I think a lot of people probably associate lights with a Christmas celebration. And I think we should anticipate a similar reaction to the one the village got last year. Even though I understand that the focal point is shifting away from the corner of Park and Vernon to Wyman Green. I just, even if there's not something that we could do as a group or in conjunction with the village specifically, or, you know, maybe it's with the park district, but I do think we should anticipate that there will be reactions to that again, and maybe think about how we want to, you know, if there's sort of a better way to respond to that this year or to address it ahead of time. I don't know.
Okay, yeah, thank you for that feedback.
Sharon, we can, Raphael, and we can offline about this a little bit and maybe come back to the group with an update at our November meeting, which again, I keep pointing out is in just 2 weeks. Maybe we should start meeting every 2 weeks again. This is so exciting. We can, you know, sort of spitball around that. But I do know we're very limited in our ability to address the criticism in a meaningful way. So I think it seems to me the village's response has been like, it feels appropriate to me, but and as someone who is a person of faith and is Christian, I'll say that I find the village's celebration bordering on rampant commercialism, which is in fact what it's probably supposed to be. I don't find it religious in any meaningful way, but I can understand the perception. And I think that you're right that we should anticipate that others may feel the same or will feel the same, and then sort of determine how if how we want to be prepared to respond to that, if nothing else in the way that we talk about it.
Can I just ask a quick question? What's the official celebration called? Is it just the lighting of the lights or something like that?
Light the lights.
Light the lights? Okay. It's interesting.
I just want to back up what Emily said, because I think she has a really strong point. So I would almost go a step further and say, yeah, how about we make this part of the agenda in our next meeting? And rather than saying, oh, maybe we can prepare for blowback, why don't we be a little bit more proactive and try to come up with a list of ideas that we can hand over to the village board, say, hey, we know there's going to be blowback. Here's some ideas that we'd love you to consider that maybe you can incorporate. And if we see any of those incorporated, great, that's a win. Maybe we helped to address some of that blowback ahead of time. But if the goal here really is to be as inclusive as possible, I think it deserves some more conversation, because we have time. It's not, I know it's around the corner, but we still have time. And so I would love to see it on the agenda next week.
And just my 2 cents. I know I've been pretty quiet the whole meeting, but we can address it in a fun way too. I mean, light the lights is pretty lame, honestly. We can have the celebration called something fun that's not religious, doesn't approach the villages infringing on anyone's constitutional right. We can avoid all that and do something fun. This is an inclusive community, and we've been here now nearly 12 years, and we see people uptown, and it's fun. The reindeer and the train, and it's fun. And I understand people might get offended, but so maybe let's just start with something simple and name it something different that's fun, that doesn't have any connotation of any religion. Sometimes starting simple, solves a lot of problems. My 2 cents.
Well, good feedback. Thank you. We appreciate it. And I will definitely share it with our staff.
Hey, Sharon, was there any discussion of having a presence, interfaith presence there at the actual event?
We are not planning to have members of the faith community formally participate. Reverend Kirk notwithstanding is a member of the council, of course, if the council is there, but not we're not planning to have the clergy association, for example, participate, frankly, for the very reason, because the emphasis is intended to be on shop local, gather, kick off the winter season. It's not intended to have a religious or a spiritual component.
That's what I thought. That's what I thought it was.
Anyone else? I know you guys, I'm used to being sort of strict about time, but it feels like this is really important. So I just want to make sure that we're giving enough space to this conversation. And then, yes, Sakura, good suggestion to just formalize putting it on the agenda for next time. We'll work with Sharon to figure out the right way to do that. And then once Raphael and Sharon and I have a chance to touch base about this after the meeting, sorry, I'm getting a note. It sounded a little bit like you and Emily might just have a little fire in your belly for this project. So I may come back to you guys to sort of help corral some of these ideas so that we can have a more organized discussion in 2 weeks, if that's okay.
I'd like to help too. I'd like to be a part of that as well.
I think 3 is good, right? So I will communicate. How about this? Raphael and I will communicate back to Sakura, and then she can circle up with Emily and Anise, and y'all will be off to the races to report back to us in November. Does that work? Awesome.
And perhaps I can connect with the 3 of you. There is some time between now and the event. There are some logistical considerations that have already been made, whether it's like, for example, we already booked the band. The promos for it have already gone to print with the name, so maybe that we might put a pin in, say, a name discussion for a future year. But I do want to be cognizant of some of the planning efforts that have already been underway, and some of the logistics that unfortunately we do bump into some scheduling commitments with food trucks, for example. They're tough to book. I've not gotten confirmation if those, for example, have been inked as far as participating. So sometimes those do book up quickly. So I just want to share that as we have these conversations.
Anyone else? All right, in the interest of time, and I think all of our bandwidth, speaking only for myself, we could see if there's any other business, and then ask to see if there have been any comments from the public while we've been meeting. Sakura, yeah, go ahead.
I just have a question. So for those of us who have volunteered to, connect with other groups or to be that kind of liaison, like we discussed last 6 weeks ago, are we going to get instruction or some kind of intro?
Yes.
Or, okay, just wanted to make sure that I hadn't dropped
Yes, sorry.
Okay.
That's on me. Yes, those of you who have volunteered for positions, sort of as relationship managers, for lack of a better term, will be hearing from me, if not already. So yeah, just sit tight, and apologies if you've been waiting by the phone. Any other business? And Sharon, any other comments, public comments?
I'm just checking our email, and one moment, bear with me.
Well, hey, while Sharon's looking that up, I did want to say to everybody, please let people know that if they want to contact the council, to send an email to the email address that's on the village's website. That is the only guaranteed way that if they want to send a message, invite the council to anything, that is the most effective way versus just emailing us individually or only a small group.
There were no comments submitted by email. I do see Mr. Mendoza's hand raised.
Sorry, Mr. Mendoza's hand is raised.
Yes.
And he's already had 10 minutes. I'll look to the committee on this. If we have another 3 minutes for Mr. Mendoza, it's fine with me. But I understand that we normally wrap by 6:30. So show of hands, 3 minutes for Mr. Mendoza. Great, Mr. Mendoza, take it away.
And Miles, you should be able to unmute.
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to respond. I was pretty deeply insulted. I thought this was kind of a safe space and a place for brave conversations. And, I did my best to speak the truth, be brave, show up, speak up. And to not only be, I think the attempt was really to kind of cancel my voice, but more to say that I shouldn't have these opinions as a minority member of the community. They must come from someone with financial interests, that must be why I'm speaking. And it's just as disheartening as it can be when you think about what this committee is trying to accomplish. Because someone is a certain kind of skin color or certain background does not define the way that they think and they act and behave, what political beliefs they may have. Intellectual diversity is just as important as every other kind of diversity, and embracing that. And I just find it incredibly offensive that as an individual living in a town that decides to speak up, that somehow that is someone else's hand pulling my strings. It's just sad to me. I really want to make this country better. I think I do work nationally. I work with the American Enterprise Institute, but I believe it starts in my own backyard, and I've tried to get involved in my own backyard, and the lack of respect and really dignity given to me in doing so is just, it's degrading. And I thought that we were beyond this point in our society, and to have it come from a committee of community and inclusion, it's just remarkable. It really is. It's remarkable. And I'm just so sorry to have seen this today. And that's all I've got.
Anise? Oh, you're on mute, Anise.
Sorry, I put my hand down, but I didn't unmute myself. Thank you for your comments. I just want to say that we are a committee, but we are all individuals, and we all have different thoughts and feelings, and we're still getting to know one another. We don't always agree. There was no universal, categoric rejection of what you said. I think we all listened. There was something said that, that is maybe for the two of you to hash out, but I think to generalize and say, we as a committee responded to you in a certain way, or we as a committee took a position that was hurtful to you. I'm sorry to hear you feel that way, but I didn't say anything. I listened, as did everybody else. And sometimes people are going to disagree, and it's going to come out on the most basic surface level. And there's more digging to do to that, but sometimes people have visceral reactions, and I can own that when I have that. But to sort of, address what you're saying, that, we all, or everyone, or this entire committee, we are all individuals, and we've come together for different reasons, and we all have different backgrounds. And frankly, we haven't even had the opportunity to meet as a whole committee in person to even know what we look like from the head down. So, although we've been working together, we're still in process, and I'd like you to give us also the benefit of the doubt that we're all individuals that come to what we're doing for our own personal and individual reasons, and that you would see us as so.
The only thing that I would like to add, is that, yes, sorry. Sorry for the time limit, is that, Ms. Mendoza, we heard you. We gave you, there's a reason why we reached out and wanted you here today. I do not have to agree with you on 100% every single aspect of life. I don't do it with my wife. I don't do it with my kids. I don't do it with my dad, my sisters. I don't think there's anyone that can say that I agree with them 100% on every single aspect. I agree with you cold-heartedly that discussions bring resolutions. And the thing that must be remembered is we're not going to get everything that we want. There is no negotiation or discussion or any kind of merit kind of conversation in which someone walks away with everything that they possibly want. The point of hearing you and listening to you, and what I took out of it, is to consider a different opinion than maybe one that I've heard here, or one that I get in a small group. Fair enough. Therefore, we open the lines of communication. Send an email earlier so you have more time to express those opinions, those ideas, other than a 3-minute time window. The individual voices that express concerns, they have that right to express a concern, to have a discourse or a discussion. Now, it may have come off as a personal attack. It may come off as something, but while this was happening, it was brought up that we should focus on the message that you were bringing, not where you're at from 9 to 5 or 9 to 6, whatever your work hours are, with all due respect. I'm not trying to, anyway. The point is, this committee, we exist to try to make this a welcoming community, regardless of fill in the blank. I am not going to agree with someone who tells me that Greek food is the best food in the world. I am not going to agree with someone on a certain issue because that's human nature. I will not agree with everything what you have to say, what Hillary, Anise, Gary, Vivek, it doesn't matter. But I will take your words into consideration on how to make it a better group so that my community is more welcoming for everybody. That does not necessarily mean that I'm going to agree on political aspects, but as to what you said earlier, there will be perspectives, there will be ideas that we can find an agreement to, that we agreed, and perhaps it'll be more than what we disagree upon. So I welcome you to these meetings. I welcome to hear your voice, but I'm not going to agree with everything that you said. And I'm also not going to use this committee as a means to not let you express your opinions, not let you speak about your ideas on how to make the community more welcoming, because in essence, I'm completely killing the point of this group, of the mission statement. And that doesn't make much sense. But please, as to what Anise was saying, don't feel that we as a whole are not hearing you. I hope that makes sense. And that's all that's all I wanted to say. Thank you. Sorry to go on a rant, everybody. I know it's late. We're twins and
Vivek, what were you going to say?
Yeah, I was just going to say, I agree with what Anise said. And one salient point here, I wouldn't attribute my perspective to anyone on this call. That's my perspective, right? So when we're on this call as a council, I think maybe we ought to take that home and say, hey, you know what, before we speak as an individual on this call, it is delivered to the public as a message from the council. So that's something that's some homework that we should take back and discuss as a council.
Well, I thank you. I do think when a member of the council speaks, it's hard not to have that represent the group, but I appreciate all of those comments and thank you very much.
Anyone else, Mr. Mendoza, your time is up, but if there are any other members of the council who want to share their views or be heard on this matter or any other matter, now is the time. Okay, and Sharon, I don't know if I have to ask for public comment again, but I'm just doing it to be careful. No other public comment.
There are
Since
no
this
other members of the public here, and none were submitted by email. So I think it's safe to say there are no other individuals lined up to speak.
Excellent. May I please have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
So moved.
I second.
All right, one moment. Let me get to a roll call vote here. Co-Chair Guzman.
Sorry, yes, sorry about that, yes.
No worries. Co-Chair Scott,
Yes.
Member Evans,
Yes.
Member Flanagan. Oh, I'm sorry, she wasn't here. Member Evans. Did I get you already? I'm sorry, not doing well with my list today. Member Kirk McKenzie,
Yes.
Member Molly,
Yes.
Member Moses,
Yes.
Member Robbins,
Yes.
Member Rubin,
Yes.
Member Young.
Yes.
Okay, we are adjourned. Thank you all. Have a nice evening. Bye-bye.
Thanks.
Thank you, everybody. Have a good
Bye-bye.
night.
Thanks,